This from John Adams. Remember that democracy never lasts long. It soon wastes, exhausts, and murders itself. There never was a democracy yet that did not commit suicide. Kind of a grim thought. But by the way, how does a democracy commit suicide? Any thoughts? What's that? Yeah, I think that's the point here, but what's the mechanism? How does a democracy kill itself? Yeah, go ahead. That's not necessarily what I was trying to get at, but I think that's probably one of the main causes. If we look at kind of another comment here, and then I'll kind of put my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just by the nature of democracy, many people, so many people unchecked can just go bad ways, I guess.
Yeah. So it used to be that we would try to figure out, well, you know what, let's try to figure out how to tax, some portion of society and then give benefits to the other portion of society. If we can kind of tax it right, where we're taxing a smaller portion, they won't vote for us, but everyone that we're giving stuff to will vote for us. And that was the mechanism that we used for a long time. And then we figured out something better. We figured out a way to tax people who don't even vote at all. Do you know who those people are? What's that? Not Puerto Rico. Maybe so, but I mean that is no party's strategy to get elected today. Who's a great body of people that we are taxing today to be able to give stuff to voters today? Yeah. No, actually, that would be great if that was the case. I mean, that's how the federal government was designed to be funded, and it would have kept the federal government small, because if you raise the tariffs too high, people just quit sending, importing and exporting, and so they've got to be balanced. Go ahead. Corporations. Not corporations. Children. Yeah, that's exactly right. So by spending every year, like trillions of dollars more than we take in tax, we are creating a huge burden. Who's going to have to pay that burden? I don't know, someone off in the future, but whoever it is, they're not voting yet, right? It's just a young generation who can't vote about what we're doing to their future. And that, to me, this is one of the most troubling things in our society today. And both major parties are equally guilty of doing this. So anyway, off my soapbox about modern politics for a while. All right, folks, when is the user forms assignment due? Is it today? Oh, Wednesday, okay. No, I knew it was coming up because people were sending questions in, so that usually doesn't happen until we're getting pretty close. So here's one common thing, and I think it's pretty common to kind of not really pay a close attention to all the notes that are up here. But this is a really important one. The book kind of shows you in the user form section, it shows you, oh, it's kind of convenient just to put the word end in your code, and it will just, close the form, but not just close the form, it stops any VBA code from running, including the automatic grader. So if you have the statement end in your code anywhere, when the grader is kind of going through, checking everything that your program does, it's going to run that procedure, maybe run the button that closes the form. And if you've got end in there, it'll surely close the form, but it will also kill dead the grader. And so the grading process will just stop. So make sure that you're not using the statement end anywhere in your code. Questions here? Yeah.
That just said the very, very end portion. It's not like end XLF. That's not the.
But yeah, end XLF is okay. End sub is okay. And if is okay. Yeah, end function, end sub. But if there's a statement just by itself, end. And I've never shown it to you in class because I don't. It's kind of a harsh thing to do, to just say, hey, wherever the code is right now, just kill it. I'd rather have it kind of exit out, kind of through by ending the normal flow of code. So yeah, you definitely want to avoid that, because my grader will absolutely die when that line executes. Other questions on the project? How many of you already completed the project? Maybe 10%. Okay, good. Okay, so we have a file to download today. Actually, we have an archive to download. So go ahead and go to November 1st on the blog and download crime.zip. Today, I am going to be showing you, in fact, the stuff that we do today, I'm really getting you started on, is it the next project? What's our next project? Yeah, the database project. Okay, the database project is universally accepted by students as the most difficult project of the semester. It used to be, and it really is designed to be more like a final project to pull together lots of different things that's happening. And it used to be due like the last day of class, but students had so many other things that were due right at the end of the semester that they were just getting, kind of swamped. So I pulled it, I just kind of switched it. Now the new last one on automating a web browser is generally accepted as a pretty easy one. So at least that'll be stacked up against the end of the semester rather than kind of the most difficult one. But just be aware that the stuff we're doing today is going to get you started on that database project. So mark this however you want to mark and say, hey, this example that we're doing today is going to be really helpful in getting that project going. Question?
Are we going to be able to do the choose a folder homework after today?
Choose a folder homework after today. The choose a folder homework, it's due today?
No, it's due next Monday.
Choose a folder. I don't really remember what that one is. Usually, actually, it sounds like, based on what we're covering today, I think so, but that means I've got it due on the wrong day. Should be due today. But oh no, I'm not going to change it. I'm certainly not going to change. That's one thing that you learn as a new faculty member. Never ever make an assignment due earlier than you told students already it was going to be due. That's death. Don't do that. So if I had it wrong on the schedule, that's my mistake, not yours. So let me just go peek at that real quick and take a look. We got Learning Suite open somewhere, schedule. Built-in dialogues, choose a folder. Yeah, this should have been due this Monday, not next Monday. So this is the content that we're covering today. All right, now folks, so there's a file to download here, crime zip. Let me see, do I have it open in my downloads? Okay, so here I've downloaded that file. And so this is a zip archive. How many of you really understand what a zip archive is? Okay, one of the things that's if you're doing this on Mac, it'll be pretty straightforward. Double click it and it does the right thing. If you double click this file on Windows, it says, oh, this is a compressed archive or compressed folder. If we roll the clock back, wow, we got to roll the clock back to the days when we were using tape to be able to back up file systems. So we would have these like reel-to-reel tapes. They were huge, which you'd kind of mount onto the tape reader, and you would say, we're going to put a bunch of files on backup on this tape. Really, really slow to access, but hopefully we wouldn't have to access it that often because it's just for backup. And if we had like hundreds or thousands of files that we needed to write out, then each one of those is kind of a separate file write process, and things can go wrong with that. And so they made a format called a tape archive format. It's actually a TAR. So if you TAR, tape archive. So if any of you are working in the Linux or the Unix world and you see something, a .tar file, that's really where that comes from. It's the same idea. We're headed to the same idea as a zip file. What they did is they said, look, let's just take all these files and squish them into one file. And that way it's only one file move operation. Well, it wasn't long after that they said, wow, you know what? That makes a really big file, and there might be a way for us to compress it. I mean, the whole way that the data compression algorithms work that we use for zip is we take a lot of files, we put them all together into one file, and then we look for patterns, repeating patterns that happen over and over again. And instead of actually having those parts of the file repeat, they say, we're going to put that pattern that repeats over here in a table, and then each place where that actually went in the file, we'll just say, go get line 1 off the table. And then we try to find everything that we could then kind of take out in multiple places, record it in one place, and then just say it goes in multiple places. That's what the compression does. And so what a zip file is it is usually a set of files. I mean, you can zip a single file. It's not normal. We've got a bunch of files, including the file structure, put together into one file so that we can copy it around on the internet easily. That's nice. It's just only one file. But then it's also compressed so that it doesn't take as long to download. It's a really nice format. The problem is in Windows now is that when we get that file down and we double click it, Windows says, oh, this is an archive of a lot of files. I'm just going to kind of let you peek into this. And it really feels like the files are already extracted. They're already kind of brought back out of that one file that we used to move it. And it feels like they're already here, but they're not. See how at the top where it says extract in pink? If I'm looking at a file or a folder that says extract, that means this is compressed. So I probably should click on the extract tools and say extract all, or, oops, I can just right click the .zip file, right click, and choose extract all from here. So where you want to extract it, I'll just extract it in the default location. And so now we can see that I've got the crime. It's not a .zip file. It doesn't have a little zipper on the folder icon. That really is that set of files all extracted back out and native files here in the operating system. So the point is, to do this exercise today, you've got to extract that file. Got to make sure that you actually have extracted the file. Any questions? Okay, I just spent 5 minutes talking about the zip format. Just kind of show me on a scale of 0 that wasn't useful to 5. Oh, that's really interesting. How useful was that discussion to you? Oh, wow. So yeah, I'm seeing mostly 3s, 4s, and 5s there. So that's good. Those of us who kind of were around while this format was being developed, we forget that this stuff's brand new to folks that haven't been around since the 1980s. I'm getting old. Yeah. Okay. Just to make sure that I don't get confused in my aged state, I'm going to delete the .zip file, because once I've extracted it, it's just a copy. I've extracted a copy of what was all zipped up in there, and I don't need that. I don't want to be confused by it. Okay, so we've got that file. And folks, these are the files that you're going to be processing for the database assignment. In that database assignment, the idea is that we're getting this data, and this is actually crime data from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And this is how they publish the data. So at least this is how they use it. I'm not sure they still publish it this way. But you wanted to get this data, they would publish it as a set of Excel files. Well, that's fine for just kind of looking at a table here, but I'd like to be able to run queries, kind of long queries over multiple years and across multiple states. So I'm going to be able to get that into a database. And so the database project is going to say, take this set of files that was exported from the FBI and import them into your existing database. That's what we're going to do. So today, we're using this example just as a set of files to be able to manipulate. And of course, in that project, you're going to have to open up every single one of these files and kind of process through them automatically. And so that's what we're looking at today. Questions? Okay. I'm going to make a new Excel file. And I'm going to save it in the same location where that crime folder is. So not inside the crime folder, but at the same location. So I've got a blank workbook. Let me just go ahead and save it to start with. Make sure you get it in the right place. So here I am. I happen to be in my downloads folder, and I see right here the crime folder. I don't want to go into that. I want this file to be a sister to the crime folder. I want it to be at the same level. And I'm just going to call this an XLSM. And I'll just call this crime data. Fall of 21. Okay. So we're starting off, we're doing several things to look at manipulating operating system objects today, files and folders. But we're going to begin using the file dialog. So it's kind of a built-in thing in Excel. So let me go ahead and get to my, oops. Alt F11. If I type it right, we'll bring up my code editor. Very good. And I'll insert a module. I'll just call this file dialog. Let's call it file _ dialog. So it's kind of neat that there are already built-in dialog boxes to Excel. Like if I choose File Open and then Browse, it's going to bring open this dialog box. It kind of lets me navigate through the file system and open it. Well, VBA gives us the ability to invoke this very dialog box. And so that's what we're going to do. It might be that you'd like to put a button, somewhere, maybe in the ribbon or just on a worksheet that says, oh, you got to open a particular file or a particular set of files and be able to let the user browse to it using this interface. And so that's the idea. And so I'm going to start off by declaring a variable, dim fd as. Now I'm going to hook on to the file dialog object that is a part of Excel. Now the object that I use to refer to Excel through VBA code is the application object. So application dot file dialog. Let me just make sure that I've got that right. I'm going to say fd dot open. Might have to check my notes on this. FD as application file dialog. Stand by for just a minute while I check the right syntax here. I've got to tell it which kind I want. That's the problem. Okay. Let's see if that does the trick. Dim fd as file dialog. Office.file dialog, and then I've got to set it. Okay. Sorry about that. Syntax is this: office.file dialog. And then we're going to set fd equal to. All right. So at this point on our dim statement, we are just allocating an object variable, enough memory to refer to some object in memory. So just enough to hold a memory address. And then here, application.file dialog is going to create that object in memory, and we are then going to bind set fd equal to that. And I think it's not open, it's show. There we go. So that's bringing open this dialog. Okay, so this just, we've got a variable that allows us to refer to the object once we create it. This will create an instance of that object, specifically picking the, in fact, that'll come off the list if we just open the parentheses here. These are the 4 different types of file dialogs that we can choose. So we can pick a file, we can pick a folder, we can do the open dialog or the save as dialog. I'm going to do the one that just allows me to pick a file. And then fd.show will then actually show that dialog. Okay. Questions to this point? Yes.
What is the office code? Like the office, the first object?
So right here. So this is just getting me to the kind of object that I'm using. In fact, we would be just fine using this as object, because we're just allocating enough memory to be able to store a variable. But by saying, hey, there's an object out there called office, and it has a property which is called file dialog, which is also an object. And so it's the property of office that allows us to manipulate these dialogs. Other questions? Okay. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to show that dialog. And let me go ahead and print out just the time so I can see when this actually ends executing. All right, so I'll run this. It brings open this file dialog. You'll notice that it has not executed the debug.print now, otherwise it would show the time, date and time right up here. And so when I do show, it pauses the execution of the code. It waits until this dialog box gets dismissed. And so now this then gives the user a chance to kind of navigate around and pick the file that they're interested in picking. And then they'll say, okay, and you'll see the code continues to run from there. So this is actually what you refer to as a modal dialog box. I'm not sure where the term modal comes from, M-O-D-A-L. But it means anytime a modal dialog box comes up, your code stops, waits until that dialog box is handled and dismissed. So that's nice because now we like it to wait because we want to know what the user picked. And so let's take a look at how we can tell what they picked. So I'm going to print fd.selectedItems.count. So the file dialog has a property called selected items. It is a collection. And it just has in it the names of the files that got selected. So we should be able to see how many were selected. I'll go ahead and run this. And I'm selecting 3 files. I'll say OK. And that printed off this 3. So it is this selected items collection that's going to allow us to know which one is selected. Now, I'm curious to know what's going to happen if I don't select any. We'll just say open without having anything selected, or we won't open. Let me go ahead and say cancel. So in that case, the collection is going to have no items in it. And that's actually going to be the way that we tell that the user pressed cancel. So that might be the first thing that I want to check after we do this show. Rather than assume that the user selected something and then decide what I'm going to do with it. Instead here, let's go ahead and say if the count is equal to 0, then we want to do something. And we just probably want to exit. So we showed the dialog. The user clicked cancel. Whatever we were planning on doing with the information, we don't know the file they're going to work with. Just get us out of here. The user canceled, and so we're not going to run anything else. And so here, I'm just put a little comment here that says, if we made it here, the user selected something. All right, because if they didn't select anything, we're going to exit. Go ahead with the question.
I'm just getting an error when I'm trying to run fd.show. Do you know if it's a Mac problem?
Oh, yeah, if you're running this on Mac, this part isn't going to work. I think that's right. Do we have any Mac users that are trying on Mac and it is working? Yeah, so this is part of, and we're gonna see some other things that will work on Mac for today. So sit back and enjoy the show. Did you bring popcorn? You could just. All right. Okay, so now we've made it here. Let's just go ahead and let's just assume we're going to pick one thing. So instead of printing the count, let's do item sub 1. I don't think we have to say .name. I think we just have to say item sub 1, and that will print the name of the file that was selected. So let me go ahead and run this, select a file, select 2 files, and then one of those should be in the list. Yeah, so that was just one of the files I had selected. Now, I'm pretty sure that it doesn't matter the order in which you select them. It's not like the first one you select. Let me click founding quotes first, and then I'll click file dialog. I think it's just going to kind of look at that and say everything that's selected, put it into the collection, and then show the one. So the first one I clicked was found in quotes. Let's find out if it prints found in quotes or file dialog. My money's on file dialog. Yeah, so you don't get any information about the order in which the files were selected. Just here's the set of files that were selected. Yeah.
So selected items would be more of an array, right? Like it throws into.
Yeah. So selected items is not an array. It's a collection. So remember, arrays is just a structure. It's just a set of variables that I can refer to them by number. Collections are objects that allow you to have multiple things in them, but because it's an object, it has a property like count. So we can call the property of the object.
So it starts at 1 then.
It starts at 1. That's right. Yeah. So collections in VBA are start at 1. Arrays start at 0. So this is similar to the collections that we've worked with so far. What collections have we already worked with? Worksheets. There's a collection of worksheets, a collection of workbooks. Range probably a little kind of like a collection, but not exactly. But yeah, so we've worked with some that are built in, and then this is just another example of working with a collection. Yes.
So for the if statement, usually like if you don't put end if, then it like has an error.
Ah.
It doesn't do that
Yeah,
here.
yeah. So how come there's no end if? So this is the simplest form of the if statement. So when I'm saying there's no else involved, and I only want to run one statement as a result of the if, then I'm allowed to bring that statement right up on the same line with the then. If we roll the clock back to the early 1980s, this was the only way we could do an if statement in BASIC. There was no multi-line if. It was just you have an if statement, and then you can have your one statement. So yeah, you might be more comfortable seeing it this way, and I wouldn't feel bad about it this way either. But it's just the simple form. When you say one statement, no else, you can just put it on one line. And it does get kind of handy if you've got kind of lots of things you want to check, and if any one of those things trips, you want to get out of the function. It's kind of nice to have those all out in one line because you have a whole block of them, and they'll be kind of easier to read and kind of look at. Okay. So questions so far? Now, we can do some configuration prior to actually showing it. So at this point, we've built the object in memory. Here we're showing it, but there's some things we can figure even before we show it. So I'm going to come in here and say FD, and then the very first property here is allow multi-select, the Boolean property. I'm going to set that to false. So now, I'm assuming that we're only selecting one file, but now the user can only select one file. So now when I run this, if I try to select 2, I'm holding down the control key or the shift key or whatever. I click and drag. No, it's only going to allow me to select 1. And so that's one. There's several properties that we can set up before we show it. And this is one of them. Questions? One of the other neat things is that we have some control over like the filters. So FD dot filters, that's an object, so we can add a filter. The syntax for the added filters is a little bit arcane. So let me just go ahead and copy the example. So I'm going to give it 2 arguments. So I'm calling the filters add method, and I'm going to give it 2 arguments. I'm going to give it a string to show the user, and I'm going to give it a comma-separated list of this kind of wildcard syntax for saying what kind of file I'm interested in. When you see this star.xlsb, how many of you are kind of already say, you know what, actually just show me on a scale of 0 to 5, how comfortable, 0 means this is brand new to me, how comfortable you are with this kind of wildcard notation using a star in the file name. 4, 5, okay, so most of you that are voting are saying you're pretty comfortable with it. Some of you are not. This actually comes back to, I can't open the command prompt on this, but I can open the PowerShell, which will show me the same thing. So, back before the days of Windows, I mean, this is what your computer looked like. It was, probably a black screen with, command prompt. This is how we would launch things. Well, we would say dir star dot star would give me a listing. Would give me a listing of all the files that were in that current folder that I was on. So here's my downloads folder. The star.star says anything, a period, and anything else. So I could use dir star.xlsm just to show me the files that ended in XLSM. And so that's the only files that we're getting here. So that's where this notation comes from. And so that's what we're saying, is that these are the only files that it's going to show in the list of files. And that'll be a filter. Now the user can change that, can pick a different one, but that'll be the filter that's there. So that filter should now show up when I run this. Now, all files is still what's showing here, but this other one that I just put in is now an active filter, so the user can choose it. But I could tell it that I want a particular one as well. So I could say fd.filters. Oh no, it's actually, it's a higher level. It's fd.filterindex equals 1. Now I think it's going to be, yeah, let's do 1 and see which one. Let's see which one it selects. Yeah, that's all files. So let me change it to 2. And now it will come up with the second filter. So the one filter that's in there by default is all files with star.star. And then here we can now tell it, no, I want to start with the second one. But we could do something a little more interesting here. We could say Excel macro files. So that would not include XLSX, XLSM, and XLSB. You can save a file. The default macro enabled format is XLSM. XLSB is actually, the B stands for binary. It's a slightly more efficient mechanism to kind of save and use the file, but they work just the same as XLSM. It's just a question about how they're stored. Excel macro free files. And maybe here maybe I'll also add up here star.xls. So that's the old format before 2007. And these XLS files was the only extension, and it would be for macro enabled files or non-macro enabled files. And so we should see now that we've got kind of those 3 choices have been added here into the list. If I want to, I can get rid of the existing one that starts off there. So before I add all these other ones in, I'm going to say fd.filters dot clear. So this thing starts with the all files filter in there, but I can get rid of it and then plug in my own 3. And so now that filter, the filter is limited just to the ones that we had chosen. Questions? Yes.
What is the filter index actually?
The filter index, so at this point, what we're saying is we're putting in a set of filters into that combo box. And it's like the combo box that we use on a user form, the property of that is an array. And so it's 0-based. So even though our number of selection of the selected items is 1-based, the list of filters is 0-based. And so we're putting in 3 options. They are numbered 0, 1, and 2. And so that 2 is saying this is going to be the selected filter when we just start. The user can change it to the other ones that I've provided, but this is the one it's going to start with. Okay, other questions? That's about all I wanted to cover with regard to the filter or using the file dialog. We just take a quick peek and see if any other properties catch my eye real quick. Button name. Now let's just do button name as well. I wonder if I can remember how to use button name. Run it and see what the button says on it to start with. So it says open here to start with, but I think we could change that to whatever we want. So if what we're saying is you pick a file, we're going to delete it, we probably want to change that default from open to something else. That didn't do it. I don't remember what button name does. Looked interesting. I guess that really is everything I wanted to show you. Questions? Okay, let's move on to then a different example. This one should work for Mac users as well. So a pretty common thing, and this is actually what I'm going to have you do in that database project, is I'm going to say, listen, so that could be one way to ask a user, for the user to communicate with you the files that you want to process. Another way would be to say, all right, user, just, we're going to have some file structure set up, and you just put the files that you want to process into a particular place, probably relative to the location of the current book. And so rather than you, when you run this, rather than you telling me where the files are, the way you tell me the files to process by putting them in the folder that I'm going to process. And so let's take a look at what it takes to actually just process those files directly. Just to say, don't ask me, just move to a place relative. Okay, so yes.
So mine, it's still showing like folders when
So if you're showing folders but not showing files,
No, it's showing files too, but like I thought it was screening for only those file types. So why does it still show folders?
oh, so the question is, how come I'm showing folders here? Like, why do I get the crime folder here? And the answer is because it thinks you probably want to navigate through the file system to be able to find the files that you're after. So this will not let you pick. This is a file picker. It won't let you pick a folder. If you want to pick a folder, you'll use, instead of file, instead of the file picker, you'll choose a folder picker. And then that will only show folders for you to be able to pick. Okay, so I've got another sub-procedure here called process files. And what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to find, I'm going to want to find these. I want to find I'm going to process everything that has a .xlsx extension in my crime folder. Now, we'll notice that that is located at the same location as the file I'm working on right now, crime data fall 21. And so if I can ask, and this is a kind of a really important technique, because the default way to say, I want to refer to a folder is going to say, well, just give me the path, C:\users /DLN2 /downloads / name of the folder, crime. But what's going to happen as soon as this workbook goes to someone else's computer? Is that path going to work? No, because the username is going to be, even on this computer, if it's on this computer, but another username is, another user is opening, it'll be in a different location. And so what I want to do is I want to say, if you're going to move this workbook, make sure you move this folder along with it, and wherever you put it, it'll be able to find it. So we want these to be together. If they could move together, that would be great. And so we're going to ask the workbook where it currently is. We're going to ask the workbook the name of the folder, the full path to the folder that is currently in use. And so let me dim a variable called path as a string. Now, path is going to be equal to this workbook dot path. So all this should do now is just read what's in the path, put it into a variable, and print what's in the variable. And so that should put the name of the path where this workbook is saved. Well, the good thing is now I can say, I'm going to say, listen, this is the variable part, C:\users GLN2 downloads. That's the part I don't know. But once I get to that point, I know that that is exactly where the crime folder is going to be. And so let me just go ahead and I'm going to start off by putting in a backslash. This won't work for Mac. I'm going to concatenate on a backslash and then concatenate on crime. And so now that should show me the path to that particular folder. Now, because the Mac operating system uses a different path separator, it turns out I can ask which path separator this instance of Excel is using. And so instead of actually putting the slash in there, which makes it Windows specific, I'm going to concatenate on a separate expression, which is application dot path separator. And so if I run this expression or print this expression on Windows, it gives me a backslash. If I print that expression on Mac, it's going to give me a forward slash. If I print it on a much older version of Excel running on Mac, it'll give me a colon. But you don't have to worry about that. It'll be a forward slash for you. So now it's this, that will then build the path correctly regardless of the operating system that I'm on. Questions? Okay. So now I would like to use that path to be able to access the files that are in that crime folder. So let me go ahead and declare another variable, file name, as a string. File name equals dir. Now, this dir goes back to this statement right here, DIR. I'm asking for a directory listing of the files in the particular folder. And so, you know, it really is going, this statement goes back to the way we used to look around and kind of work with particular files, you know, lists of files. Now, the first time I call the dir function, I'm going to pass it an argument. And the argument is the folder that I would like to look into. And let me put another slash on this and also include that same kind of filter that we used in the file dialog. So star.xls x. So you don't need to, I needed this in the immediate window so that I could show you over here in dir. So if I type in dir, in fact, let me go back to my root folder. So I'm no longer, I'm way out here at the root of my file system. I am going to now ask for a directory, but instead of listing everything that's in the root folder, I'm telling it the directory to look in, and I'm telling it the filter to apply. And so that should show me all of the files that are in that particular folder and applying that particular filter. So if I had, it happens I only had .xlsx files in here, but if I had a text file in here, it wouldn't show on the list because that filter is preventing it from doing so. Okay, so I need to do something similar here for that dir function in VBA. I'm going to do one more thing on my path. I'm actually going to put on the trailing path separator. So my path is going to go to crime, and then it's going to have the path separator on the end. Because now when I ask for the directory, I'm going to say I want the directory of path concatenated with then the filter that I'm putting on here, which is star.xlsx. So I'm asking VBA to do the same thing I was doing out there at the command prompt, give me a directory of a particular path with a particular filter on it. And it will actually take the very first file on that list, and it will put it into my variable file name. And so what was the first file on the list? Alabama.xlsx. I'm going to print path concatenated with file name now. So when I run this, it should show C:users, gallen2, all the way to crime, and it should show the name of the file as well. file name equals dir path. Let's see, that should run. Oh, I'm not sure why it wasn't running when I was clicking, but there we go. So now that has, so my file name has Alabama.xlsx, and my path is everything up to here. So now file name, path concatenated with file name will give me the full instructions to be able to get to that particular file. Ready to move on? I see some shaking their heads. Is there a question out there?
I'm just trying to figure out why mine's all red. It's saying it's back there.
I can probably see it in just a minute. Actually, way less than a minute. Need a space after path before the ampersand. I think that'll do it. Yep.
When I have path that comes up with this, that thing goes to my documents, to then my folder.
Oh, okay, yes. You're working on OneDrive?
Trying to say it's one thing, but I don't have it.
Yeah, important. This is an important safety tip. So this stuff that we're working with is old school VBA. It is assuming that you have a drive letter to begin your path. And so if you've got, when you ask it for the path of this workbook, if you're saved on OneDrive, the path is going to start with a protocol, HTTPS://. And so for this stuff to work, you're going to have to save it locally on your computer. So somewhere not part of a OneDrive folder. So put it in your documents or on your desktop.
So when I go to my, it'll show up with the right.
Yeah.
Just for whatever reason.
No. That's exactly what. So the comment here is that, hey, but when I go look at where this file is, I go look at it in File Explorer, it's actually showing C:\\whatever. So yeah, exactly why path returns that HTTPS when you're on a OneDrive location, I'm not sure. But let's put it somewhere that we think is local. Hopefully your downloads folder will be local, but I'm not entirely sure that's going to be the case. So if when you ask for the path, if it's giving you something that doesn't start with a letter followed by a colon, like C:\D:, you've got to get that workbook to a location where it does. Other question, go ahead.
So for some reason, mine, like, it loads correctly, but it's like, it's just, it like is /crime/crime/. For some reason, like it's getting the folder name twice.
So my guess is the folder name is actually twice. I mean, if you actually go look at your path.
That's what, so I checked, that's what I thought too.
So you checked and it's not?
And I think because it's wrong, like it won't load the Alabama.
Yeah, that would make sense. Well, really quickly, just put this workbook.path into, oh, I bet I know what it is. Yeah, just do this workbook.path in your immediate window with a question mark. I think it's going to have the /crime on the end, which means your file, you actually built this file inside the crime folder, and I don't want it there. I want it at the same level as the crime folder. So it needs to be kind of up one level. Just go to Excel and do a save as and put it up one level above the crime. Other questions? Okay. So let's see, did that print Alabama? I think it did. Yeah, here it is, print Alabama. So now this is one of the really strange things. If they were writing the language today, then this dir would return an object. It would probably return a collection of all the files that you asked for. But this dir goes back, for sure, it goes back to the 1980s in BASIC. It might even go back earlier, kind of before we were using BASIC as an object-oriented language at all. And this is old school VBA, old school BASIC, kind of part of what VBA inherited when it chose the BASIC language as the base. And so the really strange thing here is that if I make subsequent calls to path without telling it where to look, it'll give me the next file off the list. It like remembers the list. So this next one, I'm not going to put a path, just dir. You don't even need the parentheses in this case. And now I'm going to print it twice. I'm going to print it once after each request to file name. So here's my first call to file name. That should be Alabama. Then the second one is going to be Alaska. What's going to be the next one? Let's find out. So it should now print 2 files for me. But they are the first 2 off the list. So I can make subsequent calls to dir without telling it where to look, and it just says, oh, you want the next one off the list. Somewhere it's maintaining this list. And the next call to dir will just give me. Now, if I make a call to some other sub procedure and I use dir in there, it's going to blow away the list. And that's one list for my whole application. So what we're going to do, we'll start off just by putting this in a loop. Let me do this. Let me just come and put a do loop here. Do until, actually, put my first file name, set my file name outside the loop. And I'm going to do until file name equals a 0 length string. Each time I call dir, it's going to send me back a file name until I get to the end of the list. Once it's given them all to me, the next time I call it, it gives me back an empty string. And so if file name is an empty string, then I want to stop the loop. What am I going to do inside the loop? I'm going to print off the file name, and then I'm going to set file name to the next one. So now we're setting the file name initially, telling it the path to look at and the filter. And then this loop will continue to print off those files until we run out. Because once we run out, the dir statement will set file name to an empty string, and that will control the loop. So now this should stream off that whole set of 48 some odd files. Here they are, ending down here in Wisconsin and Wyoming.
Remind us what dir is.
So dir, this one right here. So this is this. It's a call to the same function that initially gets the list of files. But remember, the first time we call it, it just sends back it gives me back a string, just the first file name. Subsequent calls to dir just say, give me the next file. Give me the next file, give me the next file, until it runs out of the list and it sends back a 0 length string. Which will happen, we'll print the very last one, Wyoming. We'll ask for the next one, and it said, well, I just gave you the last one, and so dir will return a 0 length string. We'll get to the loop, come back up here to the top, it'll be a 0 length string, and then we're done. Now, as I mentioned, this is a little bit fragile because, especially if I'm using it in a control loop, which is the idea here. So the idea here is that now I've got access to all these files one at a time. Well, I want to send that off to some other sub procedure to go and do whatever it is I'm going to do with those files. Probably open it up, have probably quite a bit of code that runs through and figures out exactly what it's going to extract out of that file, put it into the database, close it. But if somewhere else in all the other procedures I might be calling from inside this loop, if I get one that executes a dir statement, it's going to blow away the list of files. And so rather than rely on whatever magical place it keeps the list in VBA, I want to make this a really tight loop that says, look, let me just scan across that and let me keep the list that I know is going to be safe. And so to do that, I'm going to create another variable called files as a new collection. Actually, let me do this just as a collection. And then I'm going to set files equal to new collection. So most of the collections we've worked with already, the worksheets collection, the workbooks collection, the shapes collection, those are collections that already exist and are populated when we start working with them. The collection object is just an object that's designed to be able to hold collections of things, not already in memory somewhere. It's just a kind of new kind of object that we can work with. Go ahead.
Is there any reason why we could use an array there?
Oh, could we use an array here? And the answer is yeah, we totally could use an array. We'd want to use a dynamic array, and then we could populate it as an array. Yeah. Collection is probably going to be a better way for us to do it because I can add items to a collection much faster than I can redim an array. So I could say, yeah, I've got an array here. I'm going to redim it. But each time I redim an array, if I tell it to preserve the items that are in it, it has to allocate new memory, copy all the old items to the new array, and then we're ready to go. So kind of a beginner's mistake working with arrays is say, oh, I've got a loop here. I'll just redim it to one bigger each time I run it in a loop, and that would be really slow. Go ahead.
So you said like we're doing this so we can put it in other subs, but then don't we need to make it of a higher scope?
Oh, no, because I'm not going to have the other subprocedures look at the collection. This loop is going to build that collection of file names that I want to process, and then we'll send those file names one at a time off to what we're going to process. Is there a question further back? Okay. Incidentally, this is so common where we say, I want an object variable that refers to a particular kind of object, and then I'm going to make a new one of those objects to put in there. But there's a shorthand syntax for it that looks like this. I can just put dim files as a new collection, and it does exactly the same thing as that second line, but it does it all in the dim. So not only, when I say new here, not only does it allocate memory to hold a memory address of where some object's going to be, the new says, oh, actually create that object and put the address of that newly created object into the files, into the variable it's here. Okay, new collection. Okay, so now instead of printing this, let me just say files dot add. Then I'm going to stop my code down here so I've got that in memory. So now I've looped through the whole thing. I didn't print anything off, but now I should be able to say, hey, what's in the files collection? Sub 1. It's Alabama. 2 is Alaska. What's 3? Arkansas? Arizona? I don't know. Arizona. So the point here is that now, if I was to make a subsequent call to dir, which would kind of erase whatever list I had that Excel was keeping track of for me, doesn't matter, because I kind of run through that, use that dir quickly, filled up a collection, and now that collection will be stable. Subsequent calls to dir is not going to affect my list of file names now. Question?
Can you explain the loop again? I was kind of.
Yeah. So the loop, this loop is a little bit, it's a different loop than we've worked with before. I mean, it's a do loop. But remember that what dir does, when I give it a path, it says, oh yeah, go find out what the whole list of files that meets this, at that particular path with this particular filter on it. And maybe there's 20 files there. It only returns the first one. So file name will be the first of those 20 files. So we're going to do until file name is blank. File name is not blank, it's got the first file in it. So we're going to add that into our collection. And then I'm making a subsequent call to dir. I'll assign whatever it returns to my file name. And this will now get the next file. We'll check to see if it's blank. It's not, it'll print it or it'll add it in. Get the third file, get the fourth file. We got 20 files. We get the 19th file. We add it in. We come back up. We get the 20th. We add the. Okay, so we add in the 19th file. We ask for the directory again. It gives us the last file, the 20th file. And then we add the 20th file, and then we ask for dir again. And what dir returns after it's already given me everything from the list, the next call to dir sends back an empty string.
We don't need to keep telling it like path.
Not only do we not need to keep telling it path, we can't keep telling it path. Because when you specify the path, it says, all right, look at that and bring the first file off the list. If I ask it again with that whole specified here, let's just look at it. So I'm gonna print that. Oh, path needs to be, oh shoot. Oh no, path is defined because I'm in break mode. And I just got out of break. So this is bringing back Alabama. If I ask it again, it brings back Alabama, because when I include the path here, it says, oh, you want to start the whole list again. But if I don't include the path, it gets the next one.
So dir remembers which folder you're in.
dir remembers which folder it was last called from, and it remembers the list of files that it found from the last time you called it. Yeah, it's different. It's really different than stuff we worked with before. And it's because it's ancient. This came into the basic language before you were born, way before you were born. Yeah.
Can we cross dir, or is there a way of like manually clicking to go to the next one? Like, I don't know, taking the position of the last file or adding one. So you're looking for the next file.
Oh, could I tell it? I already kind of got the list of dir. I want to jump right to the 15th entry in the list. The answer is no. The only way to get it is to ask for the next, just hit dir again, as far as I know. Now, it turns out that that Microsoft has made new objects. So there's an object called the file system object that works with the file system, like folders and directories and looping through lists in ways that would be feel much more natural to you. Objects and properties and methods. They're Windows only. And so I'm showing you this approach because this is the approach that's cross-platform. And it works, for what we're doing, it works just fine. I said you got to be worried about it, but it's only if you're making a subsequent call to dir while you're trying to expect it to maintain the list that you're working on. Okay. So the point is now I should be able to look at files. I think we already did this. Let me just kind of review it, because I'm here in break mode. We've run through this loop. If I ask for the count of files, it should be 48. If I ask, for what the 17th one is, that's the 17th file on the list is the one looking at name. So now, I kind of want this one to be as simple as possible, just to run through and pull those values. Now I can make another loop. Maybe I'll just declare a variable here, dim x as an integer, for x equals 1, 2 files dot count. Next, and then debug.print. So this should be back to where we were when we were just printing in our initial loop where we're using dir, but it's doing it differently. We've got a collection. This loop is filling the collection, and this loop will print off whatever is in that collection. So we've got the same list being printed out. But now I can do whatever I want to in here, including calling dir again, and it won't upset the list of files I'm working through. Question?
And so if you bring dir up again, it remembers that it was empty.
Yeah, in fact.
Does it go back to the top, or is it still empty?
So the question is, what will it return? Let me just go ahead and put a breakpoint here, and we'll run it. Let me clear this off. We'll run to here. Cancel. What did I do? Run. Okay. So now, so dir has given me the whole list, and it has given me the blank one at the end. So what's going to happen if I call dir again? So the two options you suggested will still be blank, or it'll go back to the top. And my recollection is it's neither one. It'll give you an error. You only have that one read after the list that it sends back a 0-length string, and then it's done. So invalid procedure call or argument. So yeah, it's just,
So there's no like root path that will like go to automatically your default path that it takes.
no,
You have to specify.
that's right, because dir without and passing it an argument says, give me the last one, just give me the next one off whatever list I'm working on. And this is how you build the list, dir and pass it an argument. Okay. I hesitate to say this much, but this is exactly what you need to get started on that project. This is the format that we're going to have to do. So start there, and this will get you going. Now, let me go ahead and add one more subprocedure, which will also get you going here as well. You don't have to do it this way, but this is the way I recommend you doing it on that project. Let me make one called process one file. Now, this subprocedure is going to take an argument. It's going to be the file path to open. So instead of printing this, I'm going to call process one file. So right here, I'm saying debug.print, whichever file name I'm currently looking at. No, process one file. And then down here, let's just go ahead and print it out.
That's what you're calling it.
Process one file, process one file,
It says files.
process one file.
Oh,
Yeah. So here's the call to the function. And now the function is expecting me to send it a path to a file that we're going to open, and we will open it. But that's what files sub x is. So files is the collection that I built. This loop is using x to control it to go through those one at a time. And so one at a time, instead of printing this off, I'm sending it down to do whatever process one file does. Right now, process one file just prints what that is. So I should be able to run this and get that same list of files, but it'll say in process one file before it. So we're in process one file, and it's been called 48 times. This procedure is executed 48 times. Now, the one thing that could be a little bit mystical feeling to you is, where does file path even get its value? Nowhere am I ever saying file path equals something. Anybody want to tackle that and tell me where file path gets its value? Sure, go ahead.
Well, it just gets it from that loop on the second.
That's right. Because I have set this up as a parameter, I've declared this variable inside these parentheses, makes a special variable called a parameter. What I'm saying is, listen, when you call process one file, you've got to give me the value to go into this variable file path. And so that's what's happening here. I'm calling process one file, and I'm passing it in whichever file name, path and file name, is in my collection for that iteration of the loop. So that's where it's getting its value. Well, let's just go ahead and open the workbook. Let me dim WB as a workbook. Set WB equal to workbooks dot open. And I've got the path that I'm interested in. It's called file path. Should probably print, instead of printing the path that we're at, let's print something out of the file. Let me go ahead and open up one of these files and take a peek at it and see what location we're interested in. Open, open, open. So let me just go ahead and pull. I'll just pull the first university off of this file. So that's going to be an A6, and that will be an A6 in every file. So I'm going to open it. I'm going to print. The name of my workbook is WB. Now I got to go to a worksheet. I can't just go to a cells from a workbook. I got to go to a worksheet. Trouble is, I'm not sure what these worksheets are going to be named. So let me just say worksheets collection, just the first one. Whatever, I don't care what it's named. Whatever the first one, there's only one worksheet in all these workbooks. And so get that particular workbook, go to this worksheet, the first worksheet in the collection, and then ask for the range A6. And let's go for the value. I think I closed that file. I'm going to stop here because if I just run this without a stop in this code, it's going to do this 48 times. And it takes a couple of seconds to actually open up that workbook. So I just want to see this happen, and we'll kind of control it one at a time. Process files. So it has opened up the workbook over here, Alabama. It's got the first university off of that list of files, Alabama A&M University. I'm going to step through this now with F8. Now I've opened this file. Because I set the workbook variable equal to the results of the open file, I have a reference to that workbook right here. So this now becomes another name for the workbook. So I can call the close method of that workbook with wb.close, and that will close that file. I'm back up to the outer loop. I'm calling process one file again. We come in here. We've opened up this file. We're going to print off whatever is an A6. And then, we'll close it. Now, the most of what you're going to be doing in that database assignment is filling in code here, because you've got to kind of look and pull all the data off that sheet. But this is the kind of the skeleton to get that whole project off the ground and running. Questions? Yes.
Actually, I'll ask you.
Excellent. Then that's a good place to stop since we've got less than a minute to go. So class dismissed. Yes. Stand by for just a second. File dialog W20. Open and yeah, the TAs went through and suggested which videos you should watch.
Those are just found in the content either reviews or
No, he's pointing you to the blog.
oh, to the blog. Okay.
So the names should be similar to here.
Oh, is this just the post-class video that you're posting?
Yeah, these videos are just the ones I've done in class.
Oh, just the okay. Oh,
What they're doing is they're making sure that before you call them and say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here, they're saying, listen, this is referring to stuff in these lectures. Review this.
okay. Awesome. Thanks.
Put it right there. Put your computer here.
Yeah.
Oh, if it's a question about your computer.
No, I think it was just, I'm just wondering how to save this so that it's in the same place as the zip file. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I think I was having trouble with that, so.
Okay, so it looks like you've got this here. The question is, where is this? Let's go to a different view. Let's pick, oh, it's not a touch screen.
Yeah.
Let's pick this one.
This one?
Nope, let's pick the next one over. Next one over. There we go. Okay, so this is telling you you're in this folder. And there should be a way to kind of navigate up. Let's go to the next one. Let's see what the next one is.
Oh, this is weird.
Let's preview. Let's go to the next one. Name kind. Oh, name kind. Yeah. So the question is, where is that file? Let's go back to the one.
So
Let's go back one. Yeah, there should be a way for us to
So-
navigate.
I tried to put it in my IS 520 folder
Oh, it
and
probably is.
then,
So IS,
yeah.
so just save it in your IS, click right there. Yeah, that's where it is, that's where the current folder is.
Prime,
So just save it in your IS 524. You should be able to see
that's where it
directly
was? Okay. That's where I had it. Let's see where it is. Ah,
that. Question,
Yeah, I'm just gonna do file path. That I really recognize.
does it say HTTPS at the beginning?
No, it doesn't. So it's in my downloads. When I open it up in my file explorer, it's on this PC downloads.
And that's path.
But yeah, the path I'm getting is program files, Microsoft Office, root Office.
Okay, it looks like
I don't.
you put this code in funcres.
Ooh, how do I do that?
Yeah. Just drag that up
Drag the
here.
module up into that
Yeah,
workbook.
and then delete it out of here.
Okay.
So funcres, I'm not sure what funcres is, but it's a common add-in. And that's actually, that's where that add-in is. Because you're asking, hey, where's the path for this workbook? And this workbook is the add-in. That's what we're doing. Yep. Yeah.
okay, well,
Stop recording.